people try and take risks and they do something creative, and sometimes it works and catches fire like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and sometimes it is a movie that nobody goes to see.
Insert our opinions that we don't have any like credibility behind those opinions. The expectation was really, really high, and it just missed the mark for me.
Because of the audience reaction to it, and the theater run, and the rave reviews. And I would argue that it lives up to the hype.
It almost brought in $1 billion.
It's absolutely insane. It outsold the Marvel movies this year.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good segue going into like our year recap. You know, like in your words and in your mind, like how did this podcast come to be? Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Arron.
And we put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And today, we're recapping the year of 2022.
3, 2, 1, action.
Andrew, just like that, another year is over, which means a ton of movies and shows have come out, and we've watched a bunch of new ones, and we didn't watch a bunch of them because it's impossible to watch them all.
We're not superhuman and we're not robots. But Happy New Year to everybody. Fresh happy holidays to anybody who celebrates that sort of thing. We are super excited to be heading into 2023 with you guys. 2022 is the year we started our podcast. So on the docket, we have a bunch of things to discuss. We're going to talk about the movies that came out in 2022, the movies that we watched in 2022, what we liked, what we didn't like, and we are going to save a portion at the end to talk about the origins of our podcast, Backseat Directing, and just some details on what occurred for us in that year. So we have a lot of fun stuff planned, but I wanted to wish you guys all a Happy New Year's to start, and good luck with those resolutions.
Yes, Happy New Year's. Let's just kind of dive right into the top of the box office. Andrew, sitting at the top, bringing in $1.488 billion. We have Top Gun Maverick.
Congratulations, Tom Cruise and everyone else involved. Joseph Kosinski.
Yes. We both just recently watched this movie. We did not see it in theaters, but we watched it when it came out on Paramount Plus. So if you guys haven't seen it, you can go watch it there as well. What did you think of this movie, kind of in a quick summary, you know?
So I, having just watched the first Top Gun for the very first time earlier this year as like a 23-year-old, and through the lens of the 2020s, I did not enjoy that movie really at all. I did not like the first Top Gun, but I knew there's something special about Top Gun Maverick just because of the audience reaction to it and the theater run and the rave reviews. And I would argue that it lives up to the hype that has been built up for it. It's an extremely thrilling movie. It's a theater-worthy experience, and it's just a ride through and through. It's what you can expect Tom Cruise to put into a movie. What did you think of it?
So I, as well, just watched the first Top Gun for the first time. I think I might have seen like bits and pieces of it when I was like 8 or 9, but that doesn't really count. But I just watched it the day before that I watched Top Gun Maverick. So the story was like really fresh, going from the first movie to the second movie, which I think helped improve the experience of the second movie for me. But I liked both of them, unlike you. I liked the first one. You didn't really enjoy the love story aspect of it and thought it would kind of overshadowed the planes. I thought it was good. I thought it was fine. I liked it. I think the second one definitely has a better story. It's kind of encapsulates tragedy and loss, regret, guilt, and it kind of intertwined that all really well with this impossible mission of flying these planes for the Navy and stuff.
Honestly, even bigger to me, the biggest deal of the difference between the original Top Gun and Maverick is that I felt like in the first movie I could not follow the action because they worked with the US Air Force and they got access to these planes because the movie is basically a gigantic trailer for the Navy. Sorry, I said the Air Force, but for the Navy. And so they did get to use these planes, but they did not get to use them, I think, as much as they wanted to. They had very limited footage of the jets in the air, and I think they were only able to shoot 2 rockets. So they had footage of 2 explosions that they had to convincingly use for multiple shots in the movie. For this movie, they had hundreds of hours of footage of the planes in the air to go through and pick through in the editing room. So I was able to follow the action really effortlessly with Top Gun Maverick. And that's the biggest difference for me, is being able to actually follow what's happening in the air. I felt like I was guessing a lot in the first movie.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my critiques for the first one as well, that it was very hard to follow, like not only where they're going and whatnot, but also who's in which plane at certain parts, just because a lot of the shots were very like tight or medium shots, and it was very hard to tell where they were going.
Probably to make it convincing that that actor is in a moving plane,
right?
Which is something they can do a lot better now. The POV shots facing the actors in the cockpit of the jets was like really incredible in this movie. Like you could get so much, even when the mask was on, so much from just their expression in that top third of their face because of the quality of the camera and the angle that straight on POV angle. I feel like the movie really worked. Plus the actors, they excelled in telling you what was happening, what they were feeling with such little room for expression.
Yeah, but in the second one, in Top Gun Maverick, they had a lot wider of shots when you're like outside of the plane, you know, so like you can really see the plane flying through the air and stuff a lot clearer than you could in the first one.
It's a gorgeous movie. But what's the next movie on the list?
So we have, I'm going to kind of go off the next all the way to the top 10. All right. We have Jurassic World Dominion. Dominion, thank you. Bringing in $1 billion, which is crazy. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, bringing in $955 million. Avatar: The Way of Water, bringing in basically the same.
Even though it came out in, December?
Yeah, literally like 3 weeks ago.
Just saying.
Which is crazy.
Just saying.
And we're recording this a week before this is coming out, so it's probably over $1 billion by the time this comes out. It's an extra week. Then we have Minions: The Rise of Gru, $939 million. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, $803.4 million. The Batman, $770.8 million. Thor: Love and Thunder, only $10 million less at $760 million. And then the next two, I believe, are Chinese movies. The Watergate Bridge, $626 million. Moon Man, $460 million.
China has huge markets because of the population of their country, so puts them. When a movie does very well in China, it does very well in the world.
Right. So that wraps up the top 10 for 2022 in terms of worldwide box office numbers.
Something that jumps out to me that I think will jump out to listeners too is that the Gentleminions brought the movie Rise of Gru up to 5th place in the highest grossing movies of the year, above Black Panther 2.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insane for the Rise of Gru movie to be top 5, like a kid's animated movie, let alone like the 5th sequel in this Despicable Me series that no one saw coming.
Yeah, it almost brought in $1 billion.
It's absolutely insane. It outsold the Marvel movies this year.
Yeah, crazy. That has to be one of the biggest surprises of the year, right?
Absolutely. And I didn't know that was in the top 5 until research for this episode. So
I knew it made a lot, but I have not seen the movie.
Maybe Rise of Gru is a contender for best animated movie at the Oscars this year. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it definitely brought in the most money. So those two typically correlate, you know?
Yeah.
You're not going to keep spending money on movies that aren't good. But then you have Jurassic World on there, which neither of us had any desire to go see.
We will say that neither of us saw Dominion. I did not have, like you said, a desire to see Dominion, even with them trying to draw us in, bringing the original cast back.
It was tempting. It was tempting.
It's a good technique.
It took a lot in me not to go.
Yeah, just it feels to me, the more bombastic they make the unnecessary sequel, the less I want to go see it. Like the drawn in, more personal nature that it seemed like the movie Prey has, which is like a long now sequel to Predator. I feel like I had more interest in seeing that because they were kind of pulling it back in and kind of going a more focused route. So that kind of catches my attention more than like Mission Impossible 8 having like the highest stakes. Like now the
Mission Impossible, you can't compare Jurassic World to Mission Impossible movies. Those are good movies.
I should say Fast and the Furious, because I'm absolutely going to go see Dead Reckoning, but I'm just trying to pick a series out of the air that has 5+
Fast
movies.
and the Furious is a better example, I think, because I think Mission Impossible like has stayed in its lane the whole time. You know, it's made like subtle changes over the movies. It didn't make like as drastic of a change as like the original trilogy of Jurassic Park to Jurassic World, to where now it is kind of like the Mission Impossible-esque kind of movie. But Mission Impossible, at least in my opinion, kind of stays in its lane, you know, and like just tries to top itself each time. And so far it has, you know, maybe besides Mission Impossible 2. But that was forever ago.
Probably poor choice of words. I'm ecstatic for Dead Reckoning.
Yes.
To see what I talked to you this morning about the question of, with the success of Top Gun Maverick, can Tom Cruise do it again with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning? And I think that despite what you think about him as a person, despite what I think about him as a person, he has a talent for entertaining people. And having accomplished Top Gun Maverick, which I don't think they could have accomplished without Tom Cruise.
Oh, for sure.
We'll see what he's now going to bring to the table for Dead Reckoning, because I think it's going to be truly incredible. So
the last Mission Impossible came out in 2008. It's called Fallout. It brought in $791 million. So that's a ton of money. It was on a budget of $178 million. So knocked it out of the park. And I think coming off of Top Gun, it's going to probably top that, I feel like. You know, like, have you seen some of the behind the scenes stuff?
The promotional footage for it, of their like practical stunt work, is
literally just riding a motorcycle off a cliff. I think he said he did it like 8 times or something.
I mean, my ticket's already bought.
Yeah.
So like, with that stuff alone, my ticket's already bought. So I think they're going to do a lot more to promote it too, because I think that.
I mean, they're already starting. You know, like the movie's still coming out, I think, in like summer.
Tom Cruise is one of the top people that you think of when you think of businessmen in like the artistic industry, with actors. Like Kevin Hart's an incredible businessman, Dwayne Johnson's an incredible businessman, and they're gonna sell us this movie
for sure, definitely. Any other surprises from this year?
Most surprising movies? Let's see.
While you're thinking of one, I have a movie that was kind of surprising, but maybe not as many people seen. It went directly to Netflix. It's called The Adam Project.
Watched it yesterday.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think?
It's towards the bottom of my list.
Of like, not good, you didn't like it, or just like other movies that came out this year you liked more?
Well, I would say in my list, I really don't hate any of these movies, so it's not that much of an insult. But when I watched The Adam Project last night, I turned to Sierra and I was like, every new thing that happens in this movie, I just want them to like turn to the camera and be like, sci-fi. Like, I feel like it felt so like the sci-fi elements felt really cheesy. If maybe cheesy is not even the right word, but
so by surprising, I mean, I was surprised that I enjoyed this movie as much as I did. I'm definitely not saying that it's like at the top of my list for this year's movies, but I don't have high expectations for Netflix original movies, and that's what this was, you know. So when it came out, I was like, oh, I'll watch it, you know. I like Ryan Reynolds, and I ended up enjoying it. But it's not like it's in my top 5, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the thing that rose my expectations is, from my understanding, what I heard was that it was produced by Steven Spielberg. So that to me automatically attaches a certain level of expectation to a project. Even if he's not directing and he's producing, it gives me a lot of faith in it. So even with it being a Netflix movie, my expectations were like a little bit higher than what the movie reached. But it's fun, and that's why it's not at the bottom of my list.
I actually have it ranked 6 out of all the movies that I've watched this year. So I guess I did like it more than some of the other movies that came out.
It's also beginning to get hard for me to recognize Ryan Reynolds as the characters he's playing and not Ryan Reynolds when he continues to have the exact same attitude in every movie that he's in.
Yeah, he is starting to kind of play himself.
Yeah.
You know?
Started with Deadpool. Well, could have even said it started with Blade Trinity, but just like this like sarcastic attitude, this like quippy humor, like it's every character now.
I feel like most actors and actresses kind of play the same role in every movie. You know, like
I would not say
Tom Cruise. Maverick is very similar to Ethan Hunt.
I would not say that that's true for the best actors. And you know, come to think of it, my expectation...
The people that play the same kind of character all the time, I don't think that makes them a bad actor or actress either.
I'm not saying it makes them a bad actor, but I'm saying the best actors can play all different kinds of people and take advantage of that, and they do.
Yeah, well, I feel like some of these actors that kind of get typecast into the same thing could probably do other stuff. I wonder if they just don't want to, or if other producers and stuff don't reach out to them for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I think there's a lot of like expectation for Jesse Eisenberg to play the same role in every movie that he's in, the same attitude. And that seems to be the person he is in real life too, like you said, playing yourself. Mm-hmm. And I love him in that role. But, you know, a talented actor can do other things. And maybe he can do other things, but I'd like to see that. You know, it takes me out of it to just see Ryan Reynolds walking around the movie. Like, not once did I think of him as Adam. Because his personality wasn't even similar to, I feel like, that of the child.
Yeah, it was.
They kept pointing out how the child was smart and he was like brawny and dumb. Why would he become less intelligent?
I don't know. I don't remember him being dumb.
The kid called him dumb multiple times. He said, "What did I trade my brains for for those muscles?"
I was fine with it. So, did you come up with your most surprising of the year?
I think my most surprising of the year was probably Not Okay, because as far as I know, that's a Hulu original movie, and I just kind of watched the trailer and put it on because I thought the trailer looked interesting. There was a lot of promotional material for that movie when it came out on TikTok, so I guess it kind of worked. But that movie, I felt like was like intensely emotional. It's a huge statement on the way that people nowadays deal with the way the internet affects our life and social media affects our life, the way that those kind of expectations can kind of burden us with anxieties and cause depression and cause like us to compare ourselves to others or give ourselves unrealistic standards, and how that can like drive a person to do the most insane thing and live a lie and not be true to ourselves, and then like confronting that truth in yourself. So I feel like it's like a very silly concept of the movie has like these really real emotional stakes, and I feel like it made me think about the way that I present myself and the way that I look at things online, and I like a movie that like gives me lasting thoughts. Like it makes me think and might even change the way like I view the world going forward. So that movie was a huge surprise to me. I also just like Zoe Deutsch. I think that she's great and funny. Did you answer your surprising movie already?
Yeah, The Adam Project.
You
didn't like it.
It's good. I think it's good.
Let's talk about some box office bombs. First one that comes to mind, Black Adam.
Yeah, we were talking about, because we were looking at the top grossing movies of the year, and Black Adam was right next to Bullet Train. And yes, Black Adam made more money than Bullet Train. They're just a few places apart, like 3 places apart in the highest grossing movies of the year. But
Black Adam is in 14th place of the year at $391 million.
And Bullet Train grossed slightly less, but Bullet Train had a budget of more than half. Like they spent less than half as much as Black Adam, because Black Adam spent around $200 million is the best projection, and then Bullet Train had a budget of $85 million, so they should not expect to make the same amount of money.
Right.
Like Bullet Train is more successful but Black Adam made more money.
So we actually did a full episode on Black Adam
And Bullet Train.
When we did that episode, you really liked Black Adam. Do you still feel that way now that some more time has passed? Because like sometimes right after you watch a movie, you can kind of either feel it one or two ways, right? Like you can come off of it really high and you're like, that was an awesome movie, and then some time passes and you're like, I enjoyed it, but it like wasn't as good as I remember it being. Or it can be the opposite and be like, that movie was okay, and then it grows on you over time.
Yeah,
Where are you at now?
I think that when I watched it, I was definitely caught up in the hype of the movie, and feeling that less now. It's like sagged a little bit down my list. I think I have it in 14th of 22 movies that I've believe is the number that I've watched this year, of new movies that came out in 2022. And I think 14 is a pretty respectable place with some really good movies coming out this year. I mean, this is a great year for movies.
Yeah, middle of the pack, not bad.
Yeah, the action, I think, really excels. I like the action. I like the bravado. But there are some aspects in the storytelling nature that are not obviously as strong as they could have been. Like, I think we can all agree the villain was a little bit lacking in depth, a little bit two-dimensional. So
you mean Black Adam, since he's the villain?
He wishes he was the villain. That's what the story wants you to believe.
So our Black Adam review podcast was episode 19, so you can go check that out if you haven't watched it already. And then our Bullet Train review was 44, and that came out like last week. Yeah, Black Adam, I don't think I was too high on it when it came out. I was kind of like in the middle, like, yeah, I enjoyed my time watching it. It'll probably be one of those movies that I'd watch again, but kind of as like in the background, you know, like maybe while I'm working out or like doing some work on my computer or something, just want some noise in the background. It's kind of one of those movies for me. Like you said, some of the action was pretty good. I think The Rock's performance was a little monotone, kind of stale, kind of the same all the way throughout the movie. And I think he's one of those actors that kind of gets categorized into the typecasting actor where he kind of just plays himself in every movie. But I feel like he was not as charismatic and not as like captivating in this movie as he was in some of his other movies, even if he is kind of playing the same characters. Like he was very like stoic the entire time.
He kind of treated the role like playing the Terminator, which I think that this is a little bit out of his normal character goal, even though it's like the ultimate badass or whatever you want to call it. It's still like a little bit out of his normal safe space, because he's not like that kind of handsome, charming hero. He's kind of had that more of a dark side, which maybe he's played in a movie like what's it called, Faster or Snitch. Maybe he's played that role a little bit like Hobbs, a little bit darker side. But I think this was going a little bit farther into that, and like you said, I just don't think the audience felt it. Felt as much of the anti-hero that they wanted to feel.
Yeah, I feel like I've been a lot of drama with The Rock over the past few years, and especially with this movie, Black Adam. You know, there's a bunch of drama going on with DC right now, you know, with everyone kind of getting fired and kind of they're moving on. Huh?
Is that a real cat?
Hey, yeah. Come here. But yeah, like there's a lot of drama going on with that, especially like when the Fast and Furious stuff came out with him and what's his name, Vin Diesel.
Yeah,
you know, like them both saying like they can only take a certain amount of hits and like they can't lose fights and stuff like that. Like, did you feel that at all in Black Adam, where it was like maybe they're trying to make Black Adam look better than he is in certain parts when really he should just be the bad guy here? I
mean, I get the strength that Black Adam displays in the comics, but yeah, I mean, I get that he's someone that could fight Superman, could fight Shazam. Shazam's always the person that I would probably go to first in the Justice League to have to fight against Superman, and Black Adam's his ultimate adversary. So I see the strength, but I don't know. I feel like they humanize Superman in a way more than they humanize Black Adam, because Black Adam is Dwayne Johnson. I feel like you do kind of feel that effect of Dwayne Johnson's presence as an actor on the set, you know?
Yeah. Another box office bomb of this year, which I forget that it's come out this year. I feel like it came out like 2 years ago, is Morbius.
Yeah, it came out in January, right? It does feel like another time, like the Morbius memes. Let there be Morbius. It's Morbin time.
Yeah,
like it feels like another year. It feels like a year
right.
ago.
It feels like forever ago that me, you, and Zach were talking about like being excited for this movie or whatever. And then
we loved the trailer when it dropped.
Yeah, and then none of us went to the theaters to see it, and I think that's kind of what made it feel like it came out forever ago, because we first watched it when it came out on Netflix, and we did a review episode on that as well. So you can go check that one out. But yeah, this one had a budget of $75 million, which is pretty low for a superhero movie.
Really low at this point in time.
Yeah, that's crazy. But it only brought in $167 million. So like, not that much more.
Very little profit after you account for the marketing that like a superhero movie takes to put out, if any.
Especially for a Marvel kind of superhero movie, like you kind of expect those to bring in more than 500,000, right? Like,
yeah, and to be clear, we do know that it's a Sony property, but you know it's a Marvel,
still a Marvel
character.
Name, yeah. I mean, all the Spider-Man movies that came out are Sony, but they made a bunch of money, you know, like with Tom Holland and stuff. Those are all Sony properties still, you know, but the last one brought in $1 billion.
Yeah, I think that Morbius is I think when I look through this year of movies, like I said earlier, I really don't hate any of these movies. Like I've watched movies that I hate plenty. Movies that I'm like,
we know, Andrew, we know.
But this stack of movies that I watched that came out this year, I think that there's a few that are like the cream of the crop, and then I think there's a lot of movies that are just good.
Yeah.
And being just good is fine.
Yeah.
But it's not. I'm not going to rave over any of these movies that I think are just good, or movies that I think were great for half and then bad for half. You know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with things just being good. You know what I mean? Like, they still serve entertainment, and I'm sure it was a lot of fun to make. And I feel like that's like the main point. You know, is like entertaining people and having fun while you're doing it. We say it all the time that no filmmakers, actors, producers, and all that are going out there to make a bad movie on purpose. You know, like they're trying to make it as good as they can, and it's okay that it's just good.
Yeah, and you know, in order for Top Gun Maverick to exist and be one of the best movies of the year, other movies have to be not as good. You know, they can't all be the best.
Yeah,
it's just people try and take risks and they do something creative, and sometimes it works and catches fire, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and sometimes it is a movie that nobody goes to see.
Yeah, I'm gonna name off a few more bombs. We don't have to talk about them all, but I want to mention them. We have Ambulance, which is a Michael Bay film with Jake Gyllenhaal in it. Fantastic Beasts, which is part of the Harry Potter world. Let's see, scrolling down here, we have The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Which, to be clear, we talked about this too, has been really well received critically and by audiences who have seen it.
Yeah.
Those just haven't been a lot of people to go and see it.
It's made its budget back, and that's it. $30 million was how much it took to make it, and that's how much they brought in the box office.
And like we talk about all the time, they don't normally include any marketing in the budget when that's posted. So
right.
could look like a loss for the studio.
Yeah. Okay, so you said that you watched 21 movies this year?
22.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and kind of name off all of those movies, and we can kind of start talking about what we watched and what we liked the most.
All right, so Arron kind of put me on the spot here. I love him, but I didn't know that we were ranking our movies that we've seen this year in order. I just made a list of mine, and so I put this list together pretty hastily before this episode started filming. So
surprise!
I hope this doesn't come back with me being way out of line on some of the order.
It's just a list of the movies that you liked. In the order that you liked them. It's not saying that anyone's bad or whatever. Like, you can like a movie that's not as good as another movie.
I just don't want to be hunted down and assassinated for saying that Everything Everywhere All at Once is better than Top Gun Maverick. So I know that there's some good caring fans for all these movies. So I rank these, and I'll do them from 22nd place up to first.
I like
so
it.
From the movie that I like the least, even though I said that they were all good, I'm not saying I hate this movie, up to the one that I like the best. This is my list and ranking for the 2020 or for the 2022 movies. The 22.
Oh my god.
We'll try again.
Take two.
So this is my ranking for the 20. Try again.
This is like doing our intro. Or,
I know.
You know, we mess up 3 times before we get it.
This is my ranking for the 22 movies that I watched in the year 2022 that came out this year. Emily the Criminal in 22nd place. Then Morbius, The Gray Man, Adam Project, Turning Red, Where the Crawdads Sing, Barbarian, Thor Love and Thunder coming in at 15th place. Black Adam, Bob's Burgers, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, Uncharted, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever coming in at 10th place. The Woman King just above that. Don't Worry Darling, Not Okay, Glass Onion, Bullet Train at number 5. Then Top Gun Maverick at number 4. Avatar, Way of Water in 3rd place. Everything Everywhere All at Once in 2nd place. And in 1st place, I'm sure you've guessed it by now, The Batman.
I dig it. I like it. So this year for 2022, I've watched 17 of the new released movies that came out in the year 2022.
Nice.
So in my order, and again, kind of like you, like some of these could fluctuate a little bit depending on my mood or whatnot, but these are pretty close to where I'd keep them. We have 17th place, probably my least favorite movie I've ever seen, Thor Love and Thunder. Then in 16th place, we have Spiderhead. 15th is Ambulance. 14th is Morbius. 13th is The Gray Man. 12th is Enola Holmes 2. And then Black Adam is just above that. We have Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness coming in at 10th place. The Woman King is 9th place. Black Panther Wakanda Forever at 8th. In 7th place, Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery, which we just did an episode on that, so you can go check that out. 6th place, I have The Adam Project. 5th place, Everything Everywhere All at Once. 4th is Avatar, The Way of Water. And then my podium for 2022 movies. In 3rd place, I have Bullet Train. In 2nd place, I have Top Gun Maverick. And just above that, I also have The Batman.
The Batman reigns supreme. That's going to be a lot of people's favorite movie of the year. I was shocked to hear you had Glass Onion at 7th. What did you have just above Glass Onion?
The Adam Project.
Yeah, that's what shocked me is you like the Adam Project better than Glass Onion.
Yeah. One of my biggest criteria for ranking movies in terms of a favorites list, not necessarily the best, is what do I want to watch again? And what would I be more excited to watch again? And I really like a Knives Out, the first one. The second one I think is good, but I don't think it's as good as the first one. And I think I would just rather watch The Adam Project over Glass Onions. Yeah. Now that I know how the mystery goes and all that stuff, I think I'd rather just watch Adam Project again.
So rewatchability is one of your biggest factors. You said that a couple times. And my biggest factor for where I'm ranking these movies when I watch them, just to explain my criteria, is how sucked into the movie that I was when I watch it. How entranced and enthralled I was in the journey of the movie, and how much I forgot about time. If I look around and notice that I don't remember laying down on the couch this way. I've been so sucked into the movie I didn't realize that, Sierra left the room or something. That's what makes.
Was there a baby talking in the theater? Didn't hear him.
Didn't even notice. So that's my biggest differentiating factor. I also have 3 movies that I started this year that I watched for at least an hour but didn't finish. So I didn't count those on my list, but I wanted to mention them because I did not think they were good enough to finish, in my humble opinion. And I might get some hate for these, but they are The Invitation, Pinocchio, and Enola Holmes 2. And maybe I'd like them a lot more if I finished them. One day I'm sure I will go back and finish them. But right now I do not have the energy or the motivation to go and do so. Especially Enola Holmes 2 was the one that I purposely, I didn't get busy or anything. I just chose to stop watching that movie because the mystery itself was what I lost interest in.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. I think part of it too is like you said, the experience. So I have rewatchability and the experience are my 2 highest things in terms of, or gauges in terms of what I like and how I'd rank these movies. And Noel Holmes is one of those that it's like the experience of watching it with my wife.
Yeah.
You know, like she doesn't like watching movies. So whenever I can get her to sit down and watch a movie with me, it kind of automatically makes the movie better because I'm hanging out with her.
Isn't he so sweet, audience?
I know. And
I watched that movie.
I watched The Adam Project with her too, so maybe that's why it's up there.
I watched that movie with Sierra too, and we both were done with it when we turned it off. I was like, "Are you enjoying this movie?" And she's like, "I could stop watching it right now." But we also, Sierra and I watched 4 movies together yesterday because I wanted to be more well versed in 2022 movies. So we watched The Adam Project.
How many
together.
movies have you seen the whole year? 22.
22. So I watched.
Dang. So
a good
yesterday,
chunk of them yesterday.
That's where we would have been one movie away from each other.
That's where I made my gap.
Yeah.
Where I made my final dash.
Dang.
So we watched Barbarian, The Adam Project, Top Gun Maverick, and Emily the Criminal. And she said her favorite movie of the day was The Adam Project. And my favorite movie of the day was obviously Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
But so she agrees with you
I'm
more
glad
so
she enjoyed it,
about The Adam
I did
Project.
too. It's definitely not above Top Gun Maverick, but I can see why she would say so.
Yeah. She's not Top Gun Maverick's really not as much her kind of movie, but all these movies, like, she might have not had as much interest in watching them, but just sitting on the couch, like, on her phone, she ended up getting sucked into pretty much every one of them. Probably besides Emily the Criminal. I think that one she didn't really like. She also got sucked into Glass Onion, which stinks because she hasn't seen the original Knives Out movie.
Well, luckily they're not really connected in any way.
Yeah, it's just separate mysteries.
Right.
I can't wait to talk about that movie. We're going to film that episode soon. We'll have a...
We're actually recording these backwards,
in reverse order.
That one's already come out.
Y'all would have seen this already.
Yeah, exactly. Inception.
Because I'm sure you're watching all the episodes in their entirety.
But yeah, Top Gun Maverick, man, I really like that movie. Like, when I was done with watching that movie the other day, I was like pumped up. That was so good. I really hope that we can do a full episode on that.
Oh, we will.
Because I really like that movie, and it's like just below Batman for me.
Yeah, it's free to watch on Paramount Plus now, so there's plenty of people that can watch it, and we can talk about it and interact. It'll be
if
a good
you
time.
can get through how terrible Paramount Plus interface is. But
I'm not lying. We filmed kind of a series of videos talking about different things. We both agreed that Paramount Plus was the worst streaming service of the year, but
it's terrible.
When I tried to watch Top Gun Maverick, I started it. I watched 150 seconds of ads, and then it was just buffering. So I exited out, watched 150 seconds of ads again, and then it did the same thing. I did that 3 times.
Jeez.
And then, like, I figured out I could fast forward, play, and it would finally start playing. But, like, it is the most janky streaming service for absolutely no reason.
It's terrible. The search feature is horrible. Just clicking on an episode, like last night I was watching Survivor, and you'd click on the episode. We just finished the episode, and that's what happens to us, is that once you finish an episode, it just buffers for like 10 minutes. So a lot of times you can fix it by exiting out and then clicking back into the episode. Well, it didn't read that we finished that episode. So when I clicked on Survivor, it brought us back to that episode and was buffering again. And there was no way for me to go back to the episodes list to go to the next one without searching Survivor and going through all the seasons, finding the season I'm on, going over, finding the episode that I need to watch next. It's like, man.
Well, Survivor makes us hate it because Survivor has like 50 seasons, and so that it's so much more frustrating than when there's like 8 seasons of a show.
Right.
And we both love Survivor, so that's what originally made us annoyed with Paramount Plus.
Yeah, terrible. Oh, man. All right. If you guys have listened this far, we appreciate you. We are so excited that you're watching this with us and kind of embarking on this journey. I've enjoyed doing this a lot. We just started doing this in August. And since then, I've watched more movies in the past 3 or 4 months than I had all year. And movies are something that and shows have been something that I've always been passionate about. And this has kind of been a way to kind of get back into that and dedicate more time to watching these shows, movies, and appreciate the filmmaking that goes into them and all that stuff. So thank you, Andrew, for doing this podcast with me. And thank you for all the listeners for all the support that you've shown us.
Yeah, I want to take this time at the end of the year to thank everybody also, and to thank my co-host, Arron. movies have always meant a lot to me, and especially this year, at the risk of getting overly emotional, I will say that my grandfather passed away in March, and he's the one who really got me into watching movies and has a huge library of movies that I would sit on his lap and watch movies for my whole childhood, and that's why I love them. So like you said, getting the chance to get together and talk about them and having the motivation to go and watch more movies and watch new movies and have that experience of whether it's sitting on my couch at home or sitting in the theater and experiencing a new movie and dissecting it and analyzing it. It reminds me of when I was a kid. It reminds me of him and keeps me close to him. And so I'm really grateful, and I hope we can continue to do this. And everybody that likes our videos, watches our videos, shares us with friends, helps us continue to do that. So please continue to do so. We appreciate you guys so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Andrew, the next thing we want to talk about is shows. But before we go on to shows, is there anything else you want to kind of finish with movies?
Let's see if I have anything else on my list. Movies I didn't watch, we already discussed. We already discussed my top 3 movies of the year, and your top 3 movies of the year.
Yep.
And we've glossed over my worst 3 movies of the year, which are a little bit different than my bottom 3, because my worst 3 movies of the year were The Gray Man, Emily the Criminal, and Enola Holmes 2, which I have to put Enola Holmes 2 down there because it was, to me,
because you didn't finish it,
not good enough to finish.
Yeah.
And maybe one day I'll go back, and it's the ending, the mystery is so good that it really pulls it all together for me. But for now, was not a big fan of that movie.
I think just like you saying that The Gray Man was so low, I don't have it as low on my list, but I think it was one of those movies that was like the expectation was really, really high, and it just missed the mark for me. You know, like it has the Russo brothers attached to it. It has 2 phenomenal actors, Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, and it was an okay movie. You know, like I would say it's like borderline good. You know, there's definitely good parts in it, but it was kind of bland. You know, it was just a generic.
It was gray.
Yeah, right. It's just a generic action movie. Like, it just.
I expected better when I saw Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, and Ryan Gosling attached to this movie. So
yeah. It seemed like something just kind of like on the side, you know, like it. And the budget was like $200 million.
And the Russo brothers directed it.
Exactly.
Which, if you guys don't know, that they directed the best Marvel movies. They directed the Infinity War, Captain America, Winter Soldier, Endgame.
Yeah. So I think the expectation going into this movie was way too high. And for me, it just didn't land. So I totally understand why that's kind of on your bottom 3 there.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely the movie that fell farthest below my expectations, I would say, this year.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Want to move on to TV shows?
Let's do it.
Okay. So TV shows is a little bit harder to quantify financial success as movies are. You know, so we're going to kind of skip that part, you know, and kind of just talk about the shows that we've seen, some of the shows that maybe we haven't watched, that maybe we do or don't, and so on. So I have a list of the shows that I watched this year. You want to hear them?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I have This Is Us, Season 6. It's the finale. Fantastic finish to a fantastic show. I know you haven't seen this show, but it's a show that's based on life. You know, it follows this family who has triplets, and then you get to see them grow up and they have kids. And every episode is very relatable to my life in some capacity. And it has, since it has so many of like main characters that it follows, it does a great job of balancing everyone's story, but giving everyone that watches someone to relate to, which is really cool. And not only are you relating to the people, but you're relating to the situations that they're in. And every single episode I had tears in my eyes. It's definitely an emotional kind of show.
I love that. I love when shows could do that.
It's got to be one of my favorite shows. But then also like just the experience aspect of it too. I watched the entire thing with Brooke, which it's impossible to get her to watch shows at a timely manner. But every week that came out, we watched it that week, you know, and like my mom watched it, my whole family watched it. So it's something that I could kind of bond with everyone about.
Yeah.
Another show, this one I actually didn't finish yet. I just started it a few days ago, is Peacemaker. And then Reacher came out on Amazon this year. The Boys, top tier. Paper Girls, which actually, for some reason, I didn't finish. I like this show.
I really liked it as well.
I just didn't get through it all.
I like the emotional human aspects of the show.
Yeah, so I want to go back to that and finish that one up. We have She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, Moon Knight, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, Miss Marvel, Wednesday, which is a show that just came out around Halloween time, and it's been on like the #1 show for Netflix for like the past month or something. That show is one of those shows that was very surprising. I watched it on a weekend trip with some of my friends. We were like, I don't know, it was probably 11 o'clock at night, and we're just all kind of chilling out for the night. And we put it on the first episode, and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. You know, like
everyone be quiet.
Yeah, it's about Wednesday, who's a part of the Addams family, which I know nothing about the Addams family. That stuff doesn't normally interest me. But yeah, the show was very well shot. The set design is awesome. Great acting, good story. So yeah, that was a show that surprised me. I have D.B. Cooper, Where Are You?, which is actually a documentary series about D.B. Cooper.
Such an interesting story.
And I just love documentaries, you know, like, so anytime I can watch documentaries, cool. And I'm sure I've watched more than what I actually put on this list. I just couldn't remember what they were. And then the last show that I at least remember that I watched from this year is a limited series called The Watcher that was on Netflix. That one was fantastic.
You also watched The Patient. I didn't hear you say that one.
The Patient. I did. Look at you. The Patient. I watched The Patient. That was a good show. I was looking through like a big list of all the shows that came out this year. I think I was going cross-eyed looking at that thing. There was like hundreds of shows that came out.
Did Stranger Things season 4, that came out this year?
So that came out this year. However, I haven't seen it.
Oh, I have.
So that's one of those shows that I watched for the first time this year. I guess we didn't do that for our movies, did we? Movies that we watched for the first time this year.
Let's wrap it. Yeah. We'll wrap it up at the end. When we're done talking about 2022 specific things.
But yeah, that's a show that I just started this year. Stranger Things, and I'm watching it with my wife, and
makes it better.
It makes it better, but she's also very slow at watching TV shows. So we're still on season 3. We actually watched a few episodes the other night, so we're still catching up. We're probably halfway through season 3, so that's why I don't have that on my list.
Have you watched the latest season of Survivor? Because that could be another show for you.
I have not. So I'm on season 37 of Survivor because I started further back than you did.
So I didn't watch all the shows you mentioned. I'd say I probably watched between half and 3/4 of them. I watched all the Marvel shows. Mm-hmm. I did not watch Andor.
So I actually only watched
Wednesday.
Half of Andor. I think I got 4 episodes in, and then I just kind of, I don't know, lost interest.
It's pretty highly reviewed. I've seen people say it's one of the best pieces of Star Wars content since Empire Strikes Back was one of the reviews that I heard. Very high praise.
And it seems like a lot of people are in that same boat. Like, high praise for this show.
I don't think it has a lot of streams, though.
I don't know.
From what I've heard, the stream numbers for it are some of the lowest since they've started making Star Wars TV content.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think not as many people know who Cassian Andor is. You know, maybe Rogue One isn't as big a property as the main franchise movies. That's all probably part of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't into it as much. And I think part of it is because I know what happens to him at the end. So, like, the stakes
the
are low.
end. Yeah, the end result of his life.
Right. But I guess another show that's not on here that I think came out this year was...
we watched Kenobi.
Yeah, I got that on here. Not Kenobi, not Mandalorian. What's the other one? Boba Fett.
Boba Fett.
Did that come out this year?
Yeah, I believe so.
So I watched that as well, which the last half of the season was just another season of Mandalorian, which is what made that show for me.
I also watched Peacemaker and a few other of the shows you named. I watched Stranger Things season 4. The Boys season 3 is probably my favorite season of television that came out this year, followed closely by Stranger Things season 4, which is like a huge epic coming out in those two halves. Those are probably my two favorite seasons of television this year, counting live action television. Now, if you're counting anime, which I also want to talk about, I watched 5 new seasons of anime this year, and it is tough. Well, I watched 4 seasons of anime that came out this year, and then I also watched Vinland Saga, which I believe came out last year. So this year, it's tough to rank them. But I would say my fourth favorite was actually Attack on Titan. And then my third so far has been Chainsaw Man. And then, it's so tough. Then Demon Slayer. Then my favorite season of anime that I've been watching this year is Blue Lock. Blue Lock is quickly rising through the ranks of my favorite animes of all time. And it's such a phenomenal show, such a great anime. It's like I've been saying that it is like pure adrenaline in a TV show. Like the show is about being the best at a sport. It's an anime about soccer, but it's pure adrenaline. It's pure testosterone. It is like one of the most hype TV shows that I've ever watched, and I recommend it to anybody. It's so much fun, and I'm literally like in my seat watching the show at home, putting my hand over my mouth, gasping, smiling ear to ear. I've never smiled ear to ear so much watching any show in my life. Like leaning up in my seat, jumping out of my chair, like ridiculous, over the top, because the show's, to me, so like invigorating. So I recommend that to anybody.
I think it has a connection with you too, because you used to play soccer, so you can kind of relate to it a little bit, maybe more than Attack on Titan, since you've never faced giant monsters before.
It's also the sound design of the show, though. Like the sound design, the sound effects for Blue Lock, like they just like tear through you, you feel them in your whole body. I think
I watched just the first episode?
Just the first episode is all you've seen.
I liked it. It was good. I'd keep watching it.
It's to me the best anime that came out this year, which a lot of people are going to say it's Chainsaw Man. A lot of people are going to say it's Demon Slayer, or some people might even say it's Spy Family, but this Blue Lock's so good. For me, it hits home.
Yeah. Do you want to go into... Do you have like your top 3 shows, bottom 3 shows? I guess you didn't really watch.
I named my top 2 shows already.
Okay.
Like I say, my top 3 shows of 2022 would be The Boys in first place, Stranger Things season 4 in second place.
Yep.
And then in third place, now this is something to think about.
I got my 3, if you want.
Go ahead. I'll think on my third.
So my top is the same as yours, The Boys. In second place, I have Moon Knight. And in third place, I have The Watcher. The Watcher, I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time. I watched it in a day. There was 8 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you burned through that show.
Yeah, I went through it fast. It was good, and there was like always something new, and you're like, what is going on? What is what?
Yeah.
It was definitely one of those cliffhanger shows.
I'm actually gonna amend my list. I'm gonna move Blue Lock up to first place, then say The Boys.
Whoa.
So The Boys in second place, and then Stranger Things season 4 in third place.
Okay. I dig it. Bottom 3 shows, I have Peacemaker in third, Andor in second. Those 2 are on the bottom just because I didn't finish them. I think Peacemaker I'd finish. Andor, I don't know if I'll go back and finish. And then my least favorite show was She-Hulk. Just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I mean, She-Hulk was something that I really enjoyed all the way up until the end. And I could even say that I felt similarly about Moon Knight because I was so disappointed by the last episode. I did not like the giant monster avatar fight. In that final episode, I didn't like cutting away from the ultimate climactic fight sequence at the end either. I felt like that was really cheap and unfair to the audience. I feel like the place for that was in the beginning and not for in the climax of the series.
I feel like...
I also really enjoyed Sandman, which is another show that I watched this year. That's a really good show.
Yeah. I think Moon Knight is a good example of like what happens when the studio kind of gets in the way, whether it's not allotting their budget that is sufficient for making what they wanted to make, or rushing timelines because they didn't have time to finish all the
Fight sequences
and stuff. So they just kind of went with the cop out of blacking out, and then you wake up and all the fights are over. But other than that, I think the story of it is really good, and I think Oscar Isaac does a fantastic job acting as all three of the characters that he's playing.
God,
and he switches between them so flawlessly.
It's the best performance, I'd say, in any TV show this whole year. One of the best performances in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, certainly.
I don't think it'll happen, but Moon Knight deserves a movie. I think it'd be way better as a movie. And then we can really see like what Oscar Isaac can bring to the table with that role. You know?
I would put Kenobi in my bottom 3, Reacher in my bottom 3, and then probably, unfortunately, She-Hulk as well. Just because ultimately nothing really happens in the plot of the show, which is not like a prerequisite for a show. A sitcom can, South Park, nothing happens for seasons, incredibly successful show. Things never change episodically. But with the tempo of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's only a cinematic universe if it adds something. And what did it add? It added, it introduced Daredevil, but he already existed, and it brought us Hulk's son, who just looks like an absolute mess, which I was not excited about either. So not the biggest fan, even though I love Tatiana Maslany in it, and I think that she brings so much charisma and is a perfectly cast person to play Jennifer Walters.
So there's a lot of things that came out in 2022, both movies and shows. It's impossible to watch them all. Is there anything that you wanted to see that you didn't get to?
So we are filming this in advance, so I still have a few days to get it under the wire. But I would like to see Tar, because I've heard so many people talking about it. And I want to see movies that are Oscar contenders so I can have an opinion going into it. But that's probably my most got to see it movie still by the end of the year. What do you have? Do you have anything in mind?
There's a few. I don't really care about Oscar movies, so I don't have many of those on my list.
While I'm thinking, I also want to see Emancipation and Till. I've heard that those are like what we would consider like an important movie to watch. And I think that those kind of like historical piece movies, they have something to share. So I'd like to see those.
Yeah, I think I'd like to watch Nope, which is a show or a movie that I wouldn't necessarily have wanted to watch before. But there's like a lot of hype around it, so I want to see what the hype is about. Also, The Bad Guys is an animated movie. I just think the animation style looks really cool. I don't know if the story is as good, but the animation style piques my interest.
I kind of want to see The Banshees of Inisherin too, which is this movie with what's his name, Donald Gleason and Colin Farrell. I watched In Bruges and like I enjoyed it. I finished it, but I wasn't totally in love with it.
So doing this podcast has inspired us both to watch more movies and kind of expand our repertoire, if you will. What are some movies and shows that you watched for the first time this year that didn't come out in 2022?
All right, I made a list. So I'm not certain that this covers everything that I've seen for the first time this year, but these are the first ones that came to my mind. Mm-hmm. For the first time this year, which I'm kind of late to the game on a lot of these, I watched Saving Private Ryan, Top Gun, True Grit, Menace to Society, Moneyball, and Knives Out.
Very nice.
What about you, Aaron? What movies did you see for the first time this year that came out before this year?
So I actually didn't make a list for this one. I was kind of having a hard time thinking. I didn't want to look through every movie ever made. But a few that kind of come to mind are the big ones. We have Top Gun, first time, just like you. The Matrix is probably the biggest one that I watched for the first time. That probably should have already seen. And those are the first few that come to mind. I know I've seen some other ones, but I think The Matrix was the biggest one, especially for you.
Yeah, that's a movie I really wanted you to watch, and then you broke my heart by telling me that you thought the first Top Gun was better than The Matrix.
No, I said I enjoyed it more. There's a difference.
Yeah, but like, it's still hurtful to hear.
I was telling Andrew, like, off the podcast after I watched The Matrix, that if I watched it when I was 8 or 9, you know, back in the early 2000s, like a little after it came out or whatever, I probably would have loved this movie so much. You know, it's like the classic late 90s, early 2000s action film, and those just don't really do it for me. You know, like, I don't know, it was good. I liked the story, and it moved along well. The action was good. I think a lot of it is now dated, though. And I think you kind of continue to watch it from your nostalgic eyes.
I would argue that the stylized action holds up, because a lot of what might seem dated is also could be viewed as a stylistic choice.
Yeah, well, I didn't enjoy that stylistic choice as much as some people. I thought the stylistic choice was dated.
I think Prisoners was also... No, I watched that last year, didn't I? You recommended that to me last year, I believe.
Yeah. But you watched it all the way through in one sitting this year.
Just technically a little bit different.
Yeah. In terms of shows that I watched for the first time this year, Stranger Things, which we already mentioned.
I rewatched Breaking Bad this year. I rewatched Hunter x Hunter.
That's what I was going to say next. I watched Breaking Bad for the first time this year.
Man, so
watched
lucky.
all of it.
You're so lucky to get to watch it for the first time.
I enjoyed it. I liked it. I liked it enough to where I watched all 5 seasons, like, in a row, you know.
What was your favorite new thing that you saw for the first time this year?
The Batman.
What was your favorite thing that you saw this year for the first time, not counting 2022?
Probably Stranger Things.
Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? The
Yeah.
first season especially.
It really is.
If I had to answer the same question, my favorite movie that I saw for the first time this year that came out before the start of 2022 would be Menace to Society, which is a movie that our friend Corey showed to me, and it's like deeply affecting and emotional. And like, I had jaw-dropping moments, I'd say at least 3 times in this movie, starting like at the beginning of the film. Like, so there's moments that make you really just when a movie gives you like a physical reaction, I feel like you remember that. Yeah. And so when the movie like makes me talk and just go, what just happened? Like,
what is it about? I don't think I've heard of it.
It's about kind of like the struggles of being like a young, like a black youth in America in like a really, really difficult neighborhood, and kind of like the camaraderie and bonds that they have, but also like the trappings and the cycles of like those certain kinds of neighborhoods, and like the pressures the world puts on them, how it's hard to get out. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'll add it to the list. The list is forever growing.
When I watched it, it was on Netflix. I don't know about now.
Okay, I'll check it out. Any other thing you want to wrap up about shows, movies? What about comics? What comics did you read this year?
I didn't make a list for this.
Do we got time for this?
Yeah, I've been reading 8 Billion Genies. I talked about that on the podcast before. 8 Billion Genies is a whole lot of fun. It's by Charles Soule, and I recommend it to anybody. I always feel like putting that qualifier on there, like anybody who reads comics. I recommend it to anybody. It's a great story.
I feel like 8 Billion Genies, and we said this before in the podcast, but that was like one of the first few episodes that we did. But I feel like that's a great starter comic.
It's a good gateway comic because it only has 8 issues.
It's only 8 issues. It's not connected to anything else, so it's not overwhelming. You know, like you don't have to know any history of the characters. It's just one short story, and I feel like it's very easy for first-time comic readers to get into.
Yeah, and that actually started in 2022, so that's a good first one to mention. Right. Yeah, so that's from this year.
Very modern.
I also read some stuff not from this year. I read Batman by Scott Snyder, the first omnibus. I read the first omnibus of Injustice with the Justice League. I read all of Sweet Tooth. I don't have a list, like I said, but I read a lot of comics this year.
Paper Girls?
Yeah, well, I didn't finish Paper Girls.
Oh.
That comic I didn't like quite as much as the first season of the show. I was reading it when I watched the show, but so I only read probably like the first 6 to 8 issues of Paper Girls.
Why the Last Man?
Y Last Man. I finished the second volume this year. All my Christmas presents from last year I finished. So I read quite a lot of comics. I read the first the first volume of Something is Killing the Children, the first 2 volumes of Berserker, which is a comic book made by Keanu Reeves. Super interesting. We have it right here. Super interesting. I recommend that to anybody too. It's a good gateway comic. It's only going to have 3 volumes and the story's going to be complete, and it's just a good badass action story, and plus Keanu's name's on it. So
I love it when stories are just like one story,
Yeah.
where it's not like
connected to a bunch of things, and you have to read Green Lantern issue 15 to understand.
Or even like the compendiums of, or the omnibuses of like Batman and stuff, like it skips around sometimes and all that. Like that's a lot to get into sometimes. Some of the comics that I read all of the Avatar comics.
Nice.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, those are good. I think the first few are better than the last few. I really liked the art in the first one, and the art in the second, or on the last one, it's kind of the same style, but it's just the panel layout and the fight choreography and stuff like just doesn't seem as creative as the first one.
I'm thinking of some more of the ones that I read while you're talking.
I read a bunch of Batman ones, Killing Joke.
Year One. We both read Year One.
What else? I started reading Y the Last Man. Haven't finished it. What's the other one that I started? Saga. Yep. Yeah.
It's hard to keep track of what was this year. I know I might have read Outcast this year. I am finished with it. I read the first 3 volumes of The Boys. I finished that this year, and I just got the second 3 volumes for Christmas, so I'll be finishing those in a little bit.
Radiant Black is another one that I read this year. I read the first 2 volumes. I think there's 3 now.
Yeah, that seems interesting.
Yeah.
I read Moon Knight this year.
Same.
Because by Jeff Lemire. Because when we watched the show, we read the Jeff Lemire comics that kind of seemed to have influenced the show.
I still have not read a comic that's as good as Invincible.
Which is so tough because it's the first one we read.
Yeah.
I'd say,
and not only was it the first one that we read, there was 144 issues of it. So like it was like literally a part of my everyday life for a while.
I'd say the closest thing to having read Invincible for me was The Walking Dead. Injustice, the first volume, I'd say, is another of the closest things to catching that feeling of Invincible. Not much else has captured that same feeling. Berserker, in a way, I'd say is close as well. Deceased was a lot of fun to read. I recommend Deceased to anyone. But yeah, I think that those are all the ones that I really enjoyed the most. But Invincible, it's just its own whole world. Like it must have been what it felt like to read Marvel and DC when those connected universes like started being created for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. Before we finish the shows and TVs and kind of move on to like our year recap, what are you looking forward to in 2023? Movies, shows? What's the first few things that kind of come to mind?
Very first thing that comes to mind is Hogwarts Legacy.
Really?
Yeah. That's the first thing I thought of when you asked what I'm looking forward to.
Not Invincible season 2?
Well, we don't have a release date. Oh, we have the release year. I think it's going to be June. But yeah, Invincible, I would say, is what I'm overall most excited for. More excited than like any of these. The only thing that even like...
Is The Boys supposed to come out next year?
I think
or are they skipping a year?
I think they have a release date for next. Well, I'm not sure, so let's not talk on that. But I'm really excited for Invincible season 2. That's what I'm most excited for. I have more episodes of Blue Lock coming out in the new year. More episodes of Chainsaw Man coming out in the new year. So I'm super excited to watch those 2 shows. I believe One Punch Man is slated for 2023. They just confirmed the new season in August, but maybe they haven't confirmed the release date yet. But I'm excited for a lot of projects. We have a whole Marvel slate. Ant-Man, Quantumania, I think is going to be a lot of fun. We have a lot of... What are you most excited for?
Man, I just had a whole bunch in my head. Now that you asked me, it all just left. But the Mission Impossible movie.
Dead Reckoning. I'm so excited for that as well.
Pumped for that. There was a few other ones that I had in mind. Definitely Invincible is the top of the list. I mean, once we do get a release date, I want to reread some of the comics that I think are going to show up in season 2, you know, just so like that's kind of fresh in my mind, so I can really kind of compare the shows from the comics.
That way we can effectively gatekeep it from the rest of the community.
Right. I think one that you're probably excited for, that I'm excited for as well, is Oppenheimer, which is Christopher Nolan's next movie.
I'm so excited for Oppenheimer. It's going to be so thrilling.
Yeah. So I'm sure that's going to be beautifully shot.
And then we have Creed 3.
Creed 3, yep, that one. I'm excited for that one.
A lot of people are excited for this movie 65 with Adam Driver. Have you seen the trailer for that?
Oh, yeah, I did. I said that looked cool, and you said it was kind of lame.
I think it looks kind of cheesy with, aliens, dinosaurs, space, sci-fi. It looks like overly sci-fi for me, but could be fun.
Yeah, I think it looks cool.
I'm excited for Dungeons and Dragons, honestly. I think that movie led by Chris Pine, I think that'll be a lot of fun at the theaters, you know? And yeah. Super Mario
Hopefully
should be interesting.
Better than the posters.
You said better than the posters?
Yeah. Have you seen the posters for that movie?
No.
Not good.
Is it just floating heads?
Yeah, a bunch of them.
That's the classic.
For Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah.
How have we not said Across the Spider-Verse?
Oh my gosh, that comes out next year.
Yes, that comes out in the summer of next year.
All right, that's jumped up to the top of the list for sure. I didn't have a list. This was just like a question.
Impromptu question, yeah. We've got Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and Transformers Rise of the Beast coming out in 2023.
I had no desire to see that one.
Either of them?
Indiana Jones, yeah, maybe. But Transformers, no.
I'm shocked to see Oppenheimer because I saw a quote saying that Chris Nolan called Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. two of the best actors of our age. And I'm like, gotta see what kind of performance they're putting on for him to say that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's definitely a high compliment coming from him.
I'm sure I'll see Barbie in theaters. I'm a bit excited.
You want to go to theaters to see that?
Sierra wants to see it, so does Keegan. And I'm interested in seeing it too, not to discount. I like Simu Liu, I like Ryan Gosling, I like Margot Robbie,
yeah.
So I think it could be something entertaining. I don't know much about it now, at this point in time.
Yeah. I think it looks okay. I don't know. I'll probably watch it because you've watched it, and then we can do an episode on it. But I don't necessarily have a desire to go see it myself.
Is The Flash ever going to come out? Is The Flash not supposed to come out next summer? I'm not seeing it on this list.
I forgot all about DC.
So we should have the
What's DC?
DC, we should have The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman. We should have. We'll see.
Now, is Blue Beetle a part of this?
The Flash is on here for the summer.
Part of the old regime, you know? Are they just going to get rid of Blue Beetle after this first movie?
I think
recast him.
More than likely, yes.
That sucks.
I think he's going to fall under that umbrella. But Dwayne Johnson said in his post on Instagram, if everyone hasn't seen this, that although Black Adam's time in the DC universe has come to an end for now, he's going to remain in talks with James Gunn for any potential opportunities down the road. So it's not necessarily like a one-way road. Maybe some of these people that are going out are going to come back in at a later date.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's all ultimately up to James Gunn and Peter Safran at this point. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 should be something we're really excited for as well.
Yeah.
What do you think about Mario?
Mario? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know how to think. I wasn't a big Mario player.
It's a little bit of a different... Mario comes across all generations, right? But the real Mario fandom comes from a little bit of age group a little bit before our time.
Yeah. I didn't have a Nintendo or anything like that growing up. So I didn't really play the games that much. So I don't have that big of attachment to it. I've definitely played some of the games now, as I've gotten older and stuff. There's a bunch of buzz about it being Chris Pine being the voice.
Oh, Chris Pratt.
Or Chris Pratt being the voice, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of too early to judge. The animation looks really entertaining, looks capturing to me.
Yep.
Plus, Jack Black as Bowser and Charlie Day as Luigi, to me, sound like perfect voice castings.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'll see it. Sure. But I'm not I can't wait for this movie to come out.
The good thing about the podcast is we're going to see a lot more movies in theaters next year.
Yeah, we definitely need to get a movie theater pass.
Yeah.
That way we can go watch movies. throughout the month, and it's only a one-time fee. Like, I'd definitely go watch more things.
They need to just start inviting us to come there. Like, haven't they heard that we're
get like a sponsorship?
We're over 200 subscribers on YouTube now. I mean, does that mean nothing?
Mind blown. The amount of business that we can bring them is probably like insane. You know,
at least 10 of those are local.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's probably a good segue going into like our year in recap. You know, like, in your words and in your mind, like, how did this podcast come to be?
So the way I remember it is that I had called you up one day and I said, Arron, I feel like we have a gift to share with the world. And I just feel like we're almost doing harm in a sense, like Uncle Ben said, denying our responsibility to give this gift to the world.
Yeah, and we have such great power.
And you said, I think I'm too busy. And after a couple calls and some cajoling, I finally convinced you to sit down and film. And it was just magic from there. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, you came over one day and you're like, all right, let's do this. And then a ray of sunshine parting through the clouds, shining down on the spare room that we're in right now.
We both rode across the rainbow into the studio.
Yeah.
Now, the way that I would say it actually happened is you approached our friend Zach with the idea of the podcast. And you tried to Zuckerberg me out of being in the podcast.
No. Okay, so the first rendition of what you just said was obviously not true. The second one is like partially true. So we were all working at the same place, you know, and I went up to Zach, who's been on the podcast a number of times, and I was like, hey, we watch movies and shows all the time. We should just do a podcast, you know, like, we might as well put these conversations out there and maybe 204 people will like them, you know, and that's our number of subscribers, by the way. And he's like, yeah, like, that sounds awesome. And I was telling him that we should do it with you too. However, you were off on your clinical rotation, so you were never at work with us anymore. So I pitched the idea to him, but the idea was to have us all three on it every single episode. And then probably 2 months went by and like nothing happened. You know, I brought it up to Zach a few times, brought it up to you maybe like once or something in passing. And then the actual conversation that like made it happen was we went to the rec late at night, you know, and we're kind of hanging out and talking. And I was like, Andrew, we should really just do a podcast, you know? And I think that was the night that we kind of started brainstorming and thinking that like, oh, maybe this is a possibility, you know?
Yeah, I mean, with your background in videography and photography, you had access to cameras, you had access to microphones, which if you go back and watch our first episode,
we just had like little lapel mics.
Yeah, we've come a long way. What's when we started? August
15th, I believe, is when we first started like filming our podcast.
So we began filming on August 15th of 2022 with little lapel mics, and we had the 2 cameras. It took us a while to get everything looking beautiful. Like, I think things look a lot better now. Aaron's got an awesome setup now with lights. He's bought additional lights. He's, you know, changed the settings on the camera. We've both bought better microphones to improve our sound quality. We're trying to grow and improve every day, and we're just working off of 4 months here, not even a full 4 months, starting in August.
That night that we were at the gym or whatever talking, we were like, our main idea or our main rule was like, let's just start.
Let's get started and not look back.
Yeah, let's not let perfection kind of get in the way, you know, like, let's just start with what we have and make do, and over time we'll get better. And that kind of process was a little bit hard for me because I really like everything to be perfect, you know, like when I make a video or something, it's hard to like make something that's like, I know how to fix this, I just don't have better microphones or whatever, you know, like we literally
or whatever it may be.
We just turned the desk in the corner, we had a little couch and we threw it together, you know, we had one light going off the wall, like that's kind of how we started. And we just came up with a bunch of first topics. We the next day we were like going back and forth between names. Do you remember some of the names that we first had?
One of the big ones was "You Got to Check This Out." Yeah. Which was just our kind of like call to action, like you got to check us out, you got to check this show or movie out, comic, whatever we're talking about. And we really liked that one. But we still use it as a tagline.
Yeah.
But we caught ourselves kind of between a rock and a hard place, trying to find something that we liked, that sounded catchy, that wasn't already taken on every social media platform and already taken as a podcast name.
Right. Yeah, that was a hard day, or I think it was like a day and a half that we took to like kind of come up with names and like how we wanted to go about this. And then
we had Backseat Directing on the list of ideas for a minute.
I think On the Queue was one, the queue for like Spotify or something, where you like load up a song that's going to play next or a movie that's going to play next. I like that one too. And then we were just kind of talking about like directing and like how we kind of insert our opinions that we don't have any like credibility behind those opinions, and we kind of we're like, oh, we're like backseat driving, and then I think Andrew came up with the backseat directing. I think we went back and forth between directors and directing. Yeah. And
I think it's clearly meant to be ironic. I mean, if you're coming from this episode off of just watching our Glass Onion review, you're going to see me and probably us make suggested critiques or suggested improvements to Glass Onion, which is a movie written and directed by a genius director, Rian Johnson, who made Knives Out.
Phenomenal actors.
He made the original Knives Out.
Cinematography on point, like crazy.
Stephen Yedlin doing cinematography, and like Nathan Johnson doing the score, and all these amazing actors, Daniel Craig and Kathryn Hahn and Edward Norton, and we're going to be like, well, this is maybe what would have worked. But we acknowledge the fact that we're just sitting in these chairs having a good time giving our opinion. You can agree or not disagree. And so the name Backseat Directing is just ironic.
Yes. And then we, of course, have our Backseat Directing segment where we like put ourselves in the director's seat. We move from the back seat and we get up into the director's chair and kind of spitball what we would change or keep the same and whatnot. And Andrew's highly opinionated, so he definitely fills up that segment with some interesting stuff. But yeah, let's kind of look at some of our statistics right now. And we're filming this on December 27th of 2022. So we still have a few more days to rack up some views and stuff. But as of right now, on Anchor, which is the platform that distributes our podcast onto all the podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so on, we have 378 plays all time. Jeez, people. No one listens to us on Spotify or Apple Music, at least not nearly as much as on YouTube. Our average plays per episode right now on Anchor is only 6. I remember when it used to be like 15.
Yeah.
And
we started putting out more and more content, watering down our averages.
Yep. Our average size is 10 people in the last 7 days. Let's see, there was another thing on here that gave us the stat of like how many minutes we have. Here it is. We have created, not including this episode or the Glass Onion episode, we have made 1,291 minutes of content. And that's just for the podcast episodes. So that does not include any of the shorts that we've made or TikToks or anything like that.
That's 21 and a half hours of pure podcast content, which is almost a full day of us talking.
And now that's 96% percentile in our category, which is like movies and shows.
We're in the highest, like the top 5% of people in terms of amount of content produced.
And with us just starting in August, which is crazy, right?
And we're just two, like we've been saying, we're in our garage phase. We're just two guys working out of this studio space that we have. We're not some big production company. We don't have anybody. Arron makes our videos. I make the majority of our TikToks, and Arron helps with those too. But It's just us.
Yeah.
Producing everything we produce.
Yep, just us. And then we have a few guests on every once in a while. Zach has been on 3 or 4 times now. Corey was on. Keegan, well, I don't know what's going on with him. He needs to get on the episode.
Corey needs to come back. We've only had Corey on for 1 episode.
Yeah, I know. And that was like episode 5.
Yeah.
Like
we should do Menace to Society since we talked about it today.
He does need to come back. Now let's jump over to...
I have some TikTok content if you're switching platforms.
I'm going to YouTube next.
Okay, I'll follow you up.
All right, so on YouTube, which was the place that I mainly wanted to post to when we first discussed this, because that's a question when you're about to start a podcast. Do you want to do audio only or do you want to make video? And right now, like the best way to grow is kind of on TikTok, is to get that reach, and even shorts on YouTube. So it was very important that we did a video podcast. And when I watch or listen to podcasts, I normally do it on YouTube. I'm not necessarily watching the whole thing, but I like to kind of see their reactions to things and stuff. So I was a big proponent to going on YouTube, and we just crossed the 200 mark a few days ago. We're at 204 subscribers, which is crazy. We've only been doing this again for a few months. We have a bunch of episodes on here because we have all of the shorts and stuff as well. We have 15,986 views in just the last 28 days. So that's pretty cool to see. The episode with the most views is our Power Rankings episode from the Avatar: The Last Airbender, and that has 810 views.
Yeah, we have 237 hours of watch time in the last 28 days as well. And then we have gained 55 subscribers in the last 28 days as well. So
yeah, we were hustling this month to get those subscribers up.
Unfortunately, a lot of these analytics don't let us look at like lifetime statistics.
Yeah,
from what I can tell. Unfortunately, I'm even on the YouTube Studio app right now trying to see if I can find anything additional.
Don't know.
We'll never know. But then I have our TikTok numbers as well, which is another place that we can only as far back as I can go is from October 28th. So this is from October 28th to now. So within that time frame, our video views, we've had 155,000 views. We've had 1,988 profile views. We've had 11,000 likes. We've had 1,842 comments, and we've had 394 shares.
And this is on TikTok?
Yes.
Nice. What's our highest viewed video?
So our highest viewed video is our Avatar video. It comes in with 237,300 views. Fairly impressive. 30,000 likes, 30,600 likes.
Dang. That's a lot of people. We definitely get the most traction on TikTok.
Yeah, that one has, and also that has 500 comments. So currently we're at 1,612 followers on TikTok. Our total is 69,300 likes for our career likes.
Dang. All right. Let's see what we can do next year, huh?
Yeah, I'm so
excited to see like what the difference is. Like in perspective, like some of those numbers sound really impressive, but I mean, we're getting on average probably like close to 500 views a video, maybe even a little less, maybe 400,
for
300 on TikToks.
Yeah, our average views for our actual YouTube videos is probably closer to 30. So that's where it comes in, and I don't want to like preach or beg too much in this episode, but anything that you guys can do to share, friends and family, or share on your page helps us out a ton.
Yeah, but I'm just excited to see like our progress, over the next few months. And then of course, at the end of next year, when we've been doing it for a little over a year at that point, something that we didn't mention, but when we first did this podcast, we set a rule for us is that we have to do this for a whole year before we decide to stop. So August 15th next year, we'll reevaluate. If we don't want to do it anymore, we can stop. But anytime before that, we just have to put our head down and grind and make it happen. Even if we don't want to anymore, we have to give it a full year.
So our rules are threefold. One is going to be that we're going to continue to do this for that full year, like Arron just mentioned. Another one is going to be that we are to post one promotional video, whether, we're going to post it on all of our pages. So TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, one a day. And then our third rule is that we post 2 episodes a week.
Yes. And so far we've been able to do that. Some of the weeks have been kind of close, filming an episode right before it comes out,
A lot of times we've produced more, posting more than one video a day or more than 2 videos a week.
I think our record is 4 in 1 week, which is a lot, we don't live close to each other either, so it definitely takes a lot of time for us both to make this, and posting to all of those platforms, takes you a bunch of time too.
We live an hour away from each other. So for example, for our Avatar Way of the Water episode, Arron,
it's like 40 minutes. Don't exaggerate.
It's at least 45 at least. Yeah. It takes me 45 minutes to get to work, and your house is further.
You also drive like a grandma.
So 50 minutes for me.
Yeah. Which is super safe, by the way. So you're not allowed to die before we finish this year of podcasting. So.
Arron took out an insurance policy on me. So for Avatar Way of the Water episode, Arron had to drive all the way up toward my house to watch the movie. Then we both drove back down here to record the episode. Then I drove back home.
Yeah. So it's not like we can meet up every day and
chit chat.
Yeah. So I think that's let's talk about our goals for the podcast while we're going through this. One of my goals is to get it to where we're each making enough money where this is like a part-time job.
Profitable side hustle.
Right. To where, not to where it's enough to support a family, but it's enough to where we can kind of improve the studio a bit and kind of justify our time being here to where we can do this more often. I'm really excited to get to the point where we're recording an episode all the time, and we're putting out episodes maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week, and we can talk about things that are really relevant and stuff that's going on that day.
I want us to have a Patreon and merchandise and additional episodes for patrons. I want us to have a Discord. I want us to have all these things that I envision for us. But I think Arron would agree with me that he probably feels the same way, that my initial and primary motivations for this are: 1, to have an excuse to see my friend and spend time together now that we no longer work together. 2, like I talked about earlier in the episode, to motivation to do something I love and that makes me feel connected to my grandfathers, to watch more movies and shows. And 3, to create something that hopefully entertains people, because that has always been something that I felt really passionate about my whole life, is when people create a story or when people write a song or a movie and it manipulates the way people feel and entertains them and makes them feel something and plays with their emotions. This podcast, I feel like, could potentially be my version of that for what I can offer the world. If it can offer people some form of entertainment, some form of engagement with us, a creation of some kind of community, that is what I want to feel and impart on people. I want them to feel interested or entertained or laugh at things we say or learn something new. And that's my primary motivation. But like you talked about, it's not financially viable for eternity for us to dedicate so much of our time to something if it doesn't eventually start to offer something in return. We don't expect that quick. That's why we set the year goal. We don't expect to make millions, but it would be incredibly exciting for this to someday be our part-time.
I definitely have big goals for this, and all the motivations that you say, I second those. Those are my motivations too, to be a part of the community, to bring entertainment to people, and then just to hang out with you, and kind of talk about something that we're both passionate about. These days that we film are the thing that I look forward to most of the week, and then I think we've kind of already have that small little community building. I'm sure it's the same for you, but pretty much everywhere I go, when we're in a group, at least one time while we're hanging out, the podcast gets brought up. And it's not even by us. Yeah, it's not by me. I'm not bringing it up. Someone else is bringing it up. How's the podcast doing? Or I saw this episode. Or
we had a comment.
Oh, Arron's on a podcast. People that we know, our friends and family, they keep bringing it up. Which is really cool that they've listened to our content and watched our TikToks and all that stuff, you know, because like you said, we put in a lot of work for this, and we have big goals for this podcast, and we're excited to continue.
Yeah, we had a comment from somebody too on TikTok that said, "I want to be on this podcast."
Really?
And I thought that was really cool to see.
That's sweet.
We had this comment too that I'm looking at right now. It's on one of our Avatar videos, which I'll just mention the comment briefly. That it's a comment from Eat My Shorts Please 6969, of course, and it says spoiler alert in all caps, and I responded, "LOL, yes, it's in the opening of the video because we labeled it with a spoiler alert since Avatar: Way of the Water had just come out." And Eat My Shorts' response was, "My bad. I was high AF when I wrote that. I spaced out in the beginning. Don't hate me." And we died laughing at that response. I responded, "I'd never hate you. No worries." And I looked at Eat My Shorts page, and they follow us. So like we have people that are following our page, engaging with us, interacting with us. I hope this person listens to the show and can hear us talk about this, because that's just so cool to start that community.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities that could come from this podcast. You know, you see a bunch of like TikTokers that are in the movie kind of genre, and they're like going to movie premieres and all that stuff. Like that's a possibility now through this kind of medium, which is exciting, you know, like it's something that we're both passionate about, and like how cool would that be, you know? Like
yeah, absolutely.
That'd be super exciting to go meet some of the directors that we admire, or some of the actors that we admire and stuff like that. Like
I always don't understand it in like a scene in a movie where somebody meets their hero and they're like stuttering and like they can't say any words and they embarrass themselves.
Yeah.
But like that would literally be me if I met Chris Nolan.
I know you're already calling them Chris Nolan, like your best friends.
Close. I met him, I'd be like, I love you.
Yeah.
I like, what do you say? Like, but that'd be such an amazing opportunity, and that we have big dreams for this. Like you've been saying, like us talking about this thing, I'm sure sounds like pipe dreams to a lot of people that would listen, but I don't think we would be doing this if we didn't have like these hopes and dreams of growing the podcast and entertaining more and more people and seeing it as viable. We have to believe in ourselves first in order for anyone else to.
Exactly. It might seem crazy of like the goals that we have for this podcast, you know, especially like not having any following when we first started, you know, like,
my grandma the other day.
It's not like we already had 30,000 followers on Instagram or whatever on our personal account, and we just started a podcast and now we're doing successful. Like we had nothing, you know,
from the ground, garage
exactly.
years.
So to maybe outside people hearing us talk, like, yeah, this is where we want to get, like, they may think it's crazy, but if we didn't have those kind of dreams or goals, then they would never happen, right?
Yeah. My grandma the other day said, "Oh, I didn't realize that people could actually make money off of podcasts, that like they can make a living." And I was like, "Yep, and that's our hope that we're going to." I mean, I believe we're going to. I believe that we've come from 0 to 204 followers, and sometimes when I'm on our TikTok page working on something or scrolling through, I see a follow pop up. You know, I'll often see a follow pop up, and that is a growth that I can see right before my eyes. And I believe that little by little that will continue to happen as long as we continue to put work into it and passion into it.
Yeah, there's like some crazy statistics too about podcasts. Like, I just looked this up real quick, so I haven't like checked the sources or anything, but 90% of podcasters don't get past episode 3. That's crazy.
We're
episode 3.
This will come out as what, episode 46?
47 is this one, which is wild, right? Almost 50 in 3 months. You know, like less than 20 of the podcasts have launched this year won't make it to next year. You know, less than 20. So I was talking to one of my friends, and she was saying, like, you guys are going to make it because you're just not going to stop. You know, like, you're just going to keep going and keep going. So, like, you're going to have no option but to grow, you know? And I think that's kind of been our mindset, especially with the 3 original goals that we had of posting 2 episodes, posting on every social media platform once a day, and then not giving up for at least 1 year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the beginning is bound to feel like a crawl, but we have to crawl before we can walk.
Definitely.
So.
Especially when we're first starting out, and Andrew's checking Anchor every day, and it's like
I don't check Anchor ever now.
three listeners, 2 listeners, 0 listeners today. It's like, yeah, it's a little hard when you're looking at the numbers every day, but when you look at it big picture, you know, like we've done a lot in just a little bit of time, so hopefully we can keep it up.
We've come from averaging 100 views on TikToks to averaging between 500 and 1,000, from literally 0 followers to 204. So that's what we've been able to do in 4 months.
Yeah.
Look at us now.
Look at us go. And it's been probably our longest episode yet.
Yeah.
I think our fight scene draft that we did back with Zach, I think episode 4 or 5, that was like an hour and a half or something, but I think this one's creeping just over that.
Setting a lot of records for ourselves today.
Yeah. This one was fun. I was really excited to do this episode, you know, to kind of talk about
the whole year.
Like year's worth of content, you know, like it's fun to kind of jump from thing to thing and not be overly structured, you know, but just kind of go with the flow, and then also to talk about how we got started, you know, like that's fun to revisit and kind of like check up on, you know, of like where are we now kind of thing. So I enjoyed this episode.
Me too. I think there's a lot of closely personal, emotional things to be said that we've talked about. It means a lot to me to talk about my grandfather. It means a lot to me to talk about our friendship. Our friendship's important to me. So I think there's a lot of ourselves that go into this episode. And so like I said, that goes to building this community. So I hope to interact more in 2023 with people. Feel free to come into any of our DMs. I'm usually managing our social media accounts. Arron helps out a ton, but one of us will get back to you guys as soon as possible. We love to interact, hop in our comments, whatever you want to do. More than happy to share these kind of things with you guys. Like I want to grow this community. Another thing, in closing thoughts in this episode, something I've been thinking about this whole episode is totally unrelated, but my list of top movies, I wanted to say that the movie No, not the movie Tar. The movie Barbarian is really low on my list. And I've been thinking about it the whole time. The reason why is because I have genre bias. And I will admit that if you've listened this long into the episode to hear the explanation for that, if you're that one person, I have genre bias against horror because I'm not a huge horror fan. So I know that a lot of people really love that movie. I'll be surprised to see it so low. Do you have anything that you can think of for the year of movies that you still want to talk about while we have time?
I want to do a full episode on the Batman.
Yes, on Batman, on Top Gun Maverick.
We didn't do that because that movie came out before we started this podcast, and we try to do topics of things that are like kind of relevant, you know, especially now as we're like just kind of getting started. And we've done some things where we've mentioned the Batman, but we haven't talked about the Batman by itself. So I would like to do a full episode on just the Batman.
On the best movie of the year.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about Top Gun Maverick a lot today, which well deserved. We're definitely going to do an episode on that, but we barely talked about the Batman, and it's both of our favorites of the year. So I'd love to kind of dive in more in that. It's definitely the movie, probably my all-time favorite movie right now. Like
really?
It's my favorite movie right now. It's the one that I get most excited for. Like, I think I've watched it 2 or 3 times already, and just every time I think of the aesthetic of it and stuff, I get like pumped up.
Yeah,
you know,
it slid right into my top 10 because it's like The Dark Knight Rises meets Seven, which are 2 other movies in my top 10.
Yeah, it's really hard to pick like
The Dark Knight meets
an overall favorite, but as of right now, I think that one's my favorite movie. It's something that like, hey, you want to watch it right now? Yeah, sure, absolutely, let's do it. You know. But Top Gun Maverick was really good.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece on so many levels. Like Michael Giacchino on the music. I'm slaughtering the pronunciation of his last name, Michael Giacchino. And then Matt Reeves directing, Robert Pattinson excelling as Batman. It's such a good movie, and I agree with you. We should hit a full episode. What did you think of Everything Everywhere All at Once? Because we barely had the chance to talk about that.
I enjoyed it. We should definitely do a full episode on that as well. It's one of those movies, I'd say that and Top Gun Maverick, we both watched late in this year when they came out a little while ago, and there was a lot of hype behind them. I think they both lived up to the hype. I think Everything Everywhere All at Once was very creative. I think it kind of got a little crazy for me at some parts, you know, where it kind of lost me a little bit.
The only part where I would say it lost me was the hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
That was the only
like
thing
every
for
time
me.
that was on the screen, it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit.
Even Raccoonie maybe a little bit, but I feel like the rocks were so perfect. The rocks were like meta, but it's Colin Farrell describes it too. He has an interview, I think, with Vanity Fair where he's saying, I don't understand why a scene with rocks touched me, affected me so much emotionally. And he's like, he says it's meta, but it's not like highbrow. Like it's not like trying to seem smart or
like
trying to seem smarter than you.
Off the cliff.
Yeah. And then she dives after it.
Yeah.
It's the rocks when she goes to wiggle away and she goes to chase after her. She's like, you can't move. You're a rock. And it's just like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this is like the power of a mother's love. She's animating a rock to go hug her daughter. Like, I don't know. There's something special about the rock scene.
It's definitely like nothing I've ever seen.
Which is in itself accomplishment.
Definitely the first act, especially, I think the most, you know, because that was where like
it was more grounded.
You're trying to figure everything out, you know, like you're kind of getting introduced to the characters. And I was thinking like, wow, these characters are already really interesting and nothing crazy has happened yet. You know, like I want to have just a movie about this family in a regular universe. You know, like I'm already invested in these characters.
We'll talk about it when we do an episode on that movie. But did you notice that her name Evelyn sounds like everything?
No, I didn't.
I was thinking about that when watching the movie. I thought that was funny.
But something I was thinking during that first act was like, how do people come up with this stuff? You know, like how do people come up with new original ideas?
Inspiration.
Like there's so many things that have come out, you know, like, and there's a bunch of movie tropes that get told over and over again. Like it seems like creativity is becoming less and less common, you know, with like movies and stuff. True. Especially with like a lot of like origin movies coming out and whatnot, or remakes of movies. A lot less like original content that's like good.
But it starts with inspiration and then innovation. So I would say Rian Johnson himself says that Knives Out is inspired by old Agatha Christie novels. And then do you think it was a good idea on my end to have you watch The Matrix before Everything Everywhere All at Once? Because I feel like it was heavily drawn on for inspiration when they made Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, I definitely see the correlation. I don't think watching Everything All at Once would have spoiled my thoughts of The Matrix, though. You know what I mean?
I think it could have affected.
Because you were like, watch this first. You have to watch this before you watch.
I think you should see the people who did it first.
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise it puts the stigma of the movie being similar on the movie that originated it.
Right. Yeah. I definitely see the connection. And I think the original, like The Matrix, like it's definitely an interesting idea. You know, like it's a very philosophical question of like, are we in a simulation?
Yeah.
You know, like what's real?
Should I want to wake up?
Yeah.
You know,
like what's
to
real?
that world.
Exactly.
Yeah. What is real?
Yeah. So it asked a lot of questions. Like the story of The Matrix is interesting to me.
I love the scene where they're eating the steak and he says, like, what is the taste of steak other than your brain's perception of what steak tastes like? Right. Is it any less real?
She's like, oh, stop, you're making my head hurt.
It's like, well, in that sense, yes, The Matrix is
like,
real.
What more is a movie than a waste of time?
So much more. Yeah. So much more. The arts.
All right. I think we should wrap up this episode so we can like charge our batteries. You know, we got another episode to film tonight. Maybe we can grab a snack and then we can get to filming. Like we said, we're in the garage phase. I'd like to take another chance to say thank you again to everyone who's listened and watched and supported us in any way.
I'd like to say if you've taken anything from this episode, watch season 1 of Blue Lock.
Do it. But yeah, again, thank you everyone. You can check us out on all the platforms. And
that's a wrap.